Hello there, and welcome to the Terrace Scottish Football Podcast. I am your host, Craig Telfer, and right now I am joined by my close associate, Shaughan McGuigan.
Hello there.
And you know what happens when the Hugh Grant and Divine Brown of the Terrace get together? That's right, we are going to get intimate in a public place, but instead of oral sex, the only thing we're going to be choking on is lower league Scottish football.
Remember his appearance on that? Was it the Jay Leno show?
Yeah, basically, did he just get rinsed for the entire performance?
I think the very first question was, "What the fuck were you thinking about?"
Well, I think we all know what he was thinking about. You know, we're all
I
men.
have a rough idea.
Yeah,
I have a rough idea what he was thinking about.
We've all been there. We've all been caught short from time to time. But no harm to him. He went on to have a very good career, Hugh Grant.
Yeah. I don't know how Divine Brown got on, but certainly he did.
I'll say Divine Brown's got her own Wikipedia page. So
Alan Hale left, doesn't.
there you go then. There you go. So sliding doors moment. Who would I rather go for a pint with? Divine Brown or Alan Hale brackets left? I think I'd take out Divine Brown for a lager. Thank you very much. But Shaughan, on this podcast, we are going to be doing one of our patented grab bags simply because there was so much that happened in Scottish football over the weekend and we had to move away from focusing on 3 featured matches and focus on every single thing instead. This is the equivalent of tapas, or a tasting menu. And if you don't like it, there's the door. Simple as that. But before we get started, Shaughan, how was the horse racing? You were absent last week. You were hanging out with some of your real world friends and you were watching small Irishmen clambering over magnificent animals at high speeds.
It was good. I mean, I've never been to Chester before. It's a lovely place. The racecourse was good. It was a kind of slick operation. One of my pals had managed to basically get a kind of hospitality package. So a good day, well fed. We're kind of well looked after, I suppose. I didn't make any money. I didn't lose any money either, to be fair. There was, I mean, I bet very small. Like I bet like maybe £10-20 a race. So there was 8 races on the day. After 4 races, I was about £50 up and think it was an absolute doddle. And then after 9 races, I was £10 up and then lost that. And so I ended up all square, but a good day all round.
No, that's good. That's good. I don't like hearing about you spending time with other men. Of all the people involved with the Terrace, when I hear that you're doing a podcast with someone else or you're off on holiday with someone, I don't like that.
I mean, I'm not up to anything. You can trust me.
Yeah, I do trust you. I just don't like it. I appreciate it's very much a me issue. It's nothing to do with you. It's very much a me issue. I've got insecurities and anxieties, probably abandonment issues that are perhaps unresolved. But nevertheless, I will seek out the help that I need, and you can just go away and hang out with other people. Fraser Clark, guys you went to school with, and so on. Shaughan, before we get going, there's a couple of things to clear up from recent episodes. Now, I want to thank our listeners who do get in touch with myself and Shaughan to let us know where we've been going wrong, perhaps tell us what we should be doing right, and so on. And just 2 things from recent episodes. Emma Stump, a long-time listener, got in touch to tell us that the big tomato fight in Spain is called Tomatina, and it's held in a town near Valencia, while the running of the bulls is called the Fiesta de San Fermin and is held in Pamplona. So we got 1 out of 4 points right.
Poor knowledge from us. Poor Spain knowledge from us, essentially.
Poor knowledge of the Iberian Peninsula. But Emma, thank you very much for getting in touch to clear up. And on a more football-based theme, we had an Instagram DM from Graham McLean, who is the stadium announcer at Balmoor. On last week's podcast, I don't know if you listened to it, but Fraser Clark and I were questioning why the stadium announcer would play the theme from Hawaii 5-0 after they scored 1 goal. When Max Barry scored a header against Dumbarton, 1 goal. Normally, I said in the podcast, you play the Hawaii 5-0 theme when you've gone 5 goals up. I know Celtic, for instance, do it. But Graham explained it's because Peterhead is near the coast and the song works better than the theme from Captain Pugwash. And when you listen to arguments like that, you really can't find any fault in it.
Did the Queen's Park not do it once, but then the PA guy literally had to explain why he'd done it, like there and then?
I can't remember this. Can you? What's the story?
I'm sure when Queen's Park went 5-0 up against Arbroath last season, remember they were absolutely pummeled at Hampden. Mm-hmm. I mean, there was a dreadful performance from Arbroath,
I remember
and a very good performance from Queen's Park. I'm sure the PA played the theme tune to Hawaii 5-0 as Queen's Park went 5-0 up. But then he kind of explained it when he went, it's 5-0 to Queen's Park.
Ah, very good, very good. Yes, I remember that game. I remember Arthur Boric's doofus nephew was playing in goals for Arbroath. He was terrible in that match. It was just a real shit day for Arbroath. And
it was very funny though. If you weren't an Arbroath fan, it was funny.
Yeah, I found it funny. I'm not an Arbroath fan, so I found it very funny. But nevertheless, thank you to Emma, thank you to Graham for getting in touch. Shaughan and I often get things wrong. When we do get things right, you have to celebrate these little moments, but we do get a lot of things wrong. So thank you for letting us know, because it does make us better and more informed members of society. Shaughan, as we said, this is a grab bag. Not necessarily doing a featured match, but I think we might start off with a featured match because it's probably the biggest game that took place in the SPFL over the weekend. That's the Fife derby between Dunfermline Athletic and Raith Rovers. A lot at stake here. The encounters between these teams is often great fun. Neither side had started this campaign well, but it was the Pars who came out on top here, winning 2-0. Ewan Murray was sent off after just 15 minutes. It gave them an enormous advantage to the Pars, and Ewan Otto opened the scoring not long after the interval. Although whether or not it was actually Ewan Otto's goal, that's we can discuss that. But then David Wotherspoon curled in a lovely effort with just 10 minutes remaining. And that victory, Dunfermline's first of the season, has lifted them up into 7th place. But the Rovers are mudded and stuck at the foot of the table. And that's 2 defeats for Neil Collins since he took charge at the club. Now, Shaughan, I didn't get the chance to see this match. I was out for my dinner on Friday night. As soon as I agreed to go out for dinner and then looked at the football score, I thought, fuck, I've made a huge mistake there. But I know you were there because I've seen clear video evidence of you inside East End Park. How was the game for you?
I wasn't there, I was in Chester.
Were you? Right.
What's the video evidence of me being in? I was literally, I was in, I was at a racecourse, then several pubs, then a Chester hotel, and didn't come back until Saturday. What is the video evidence of me in East End Park? I
would love to know then who the BBC Scotland cameras zoomed in on, because I thought, oh, there's Shaughan. So I've been misinformed. There we go. Just after we start this podcast by talking about how great it is to be kept well informed, I have been superbly misinformed. Who'd have thought it like sort of, maybe it's Russian trolls have been sending me, a Russian bot factory has sent me images of Shaughan McGuigan at East End Park to confuse me and embarrass me. And so there you go. Putin's war. We are part of it on the terrace.
So I was in a Chester bar after the races, but I had no television. And it did occur to me I would like to try and find one that did have a telly, and maybe they would be open to my suggestion for some inexplicable reason, to play BBC Scotland. And if I thought I had an uphill battle ahead of me. And I was right, I'll maybe, but I knew nothing at this point. I had a text to say that it started poorly. I was I'll maybe try and find somewhere that has a television. And I checked, and Ewan Murray had been sent off. And I was like, I'm going to just leave it. Yeah. I think I'll just sit here. So all I've seen is the highlights. I've read up on the game. In terms of the highlights, from what I can gather, and from what I saw from kind of both sets of highlights, it looked like it was a poor game. I mean, it looked like essentially 3 things happened. Mm-hmm. Ewan Murray got sent off. Dunfermline scored 2 goals. There was a couple of half chances, and that was about it. So from what I saw, I am very glad I missed it. But you know something, I kind of thought that's what would happen. But yeah. I had low expectations from a Raith perspective going into the game, and that's exactly how it panned out, I suppose.
Why did you have low expectations going into this game? Did you see any promising signs from the game against Ayr United in the Challenge Cup the previous week? Obviously, taking a 2-goal lead and then chucking away 3 is not fantastic. It was certainly a promising start for Raith Rovers in that game. Why did you come into this one then with the fear, as it were?
I think, so that opening half hour against Ayr United, I thought Raith looked pretty good. Certainly they kind of popped the ball around pretty well. Created a few goal-scoring chances, not just the 2 goals that they scored for the first time this season. Actually, they created goal-scoring chances. But see, as soon as Scott Brown changed it at half-time, and to be fair, Ayr United were coming back into it the longer the first half went. They're maybe a wee bit lucky to go in at 2-0 up in that the interval against Ayr. But there is just, I feel like with every week that passes, this is a Raith Rovers team that is getting lower and lower in confidence, as you would expect. And see, in terms of when I seen the starting 11, like there's probably only, from the starting 11 that started that game at East End Park, there might only be 3 or 4 you would really want to be starting a game
Really?
from a Raith Rovers. Yeah, and I know they have like a...
It's largely the same team from last season as well.
Yeah, so part of that comes down to, don't get me wrong, part of it comes down to ill fortune in that you have like Scott Brown injured and Sam Stanton injured and Lewis Vaughan's coming back from a knock and was on the bench, and Jack Hamilton is coming back. Injuries in defence as well, so I get that. There's absolutely a kind of injury list, but at the same time, yeah, United have an injury list as well. They seem to be coping with it reasonably well, but I just feel that this Raith squad is stretched tighter than it has to be. I think it's a small squad, and I think if everybody was fit, it would probably be okay, but still be in need of reinforcements. And I think the fact that you have, bear in mind the season started, whatever it was, last week in July, first weekend in August, whatever it was, we're now two-thirds of the way through September. Raith Rovers haven't had an actual right-back on the park in the league at all, for a single minute at all. And in terms of starting an actual striker up front, that happened in the first day of the season against Airdrie. Hasn't started since. And in terms of like up front against Dunfermline, you had Lewis Jameson and Callum Smith. People that are players that are kind of willing and will do a lot of running.
Forwards, but they're not strikers.
They're not strikers. So I never really had much confidence about that. And at the back, I said it right away when Neil Collins was appointed. I'm not entirely sure about a kind of 3-5-2 from the current squad that he has. I mean, people like kind of Joel and like Craig Fowler are kind of better at talking about formations, but I would suggest that 3-5-2 is kind of what is key is you have people in the kind of wing back position that are comfortable there. I don't know if Lewis Stevenson wants to do that. I think in terms of like his age and in terms of maybe his pace, he wants to be a left back rather than a wing back. And on the opposite side, you have a midfielder. Like it just feels like you're kind of setting up to fail. So no, I wasn't confident going into the game. Starting 11 made me feel less confident, and I kind of bear in mind. It's interesting in terms of like Neil Collins said after the game that he'd only had 6 training sessions or something with the squad, and when you're a manager of a team, you do train with scenarios where maybe you go down to 10 men and you train on how do you cope with that. And he's not had long enough to deal with it. But the interesting thing is, Raith looked better after they went down to 10 men. So presumably what he has been working on since he arrived was, how do you play this 3-5-2 formation? And yet actually, Raith looked better once they went to a formation that Neil Collins hasn't prepared for so far. It was it was a poor, not a poor performance in that as a 10-man team, they restricted Dunfermline to very little, but regardless, I mean, Dunfermline were comfortable and worthy winners.
You must be sick to see Caballo Megwa sign for Partick Thistle and loan from Hibernian, probably one of the most sought after fullbacks in Scotland at the moment.
Aye, so I think that has been the worst, regardless of the start to the league or whatever, regardless of the 4 defeats, Megwa going to Partick Thistle, I think is the kind of biggest blow to Raith so far. I mean, it might be that they were never in for him. It might be that they had another target. But I do think in terms of the imbalance to the squad, that Megwa, that like there's, in terms of that back line, they are missing a right-sided defender who is comfortable going forward and defending. So Megwa ticks all of those boxes. They still don't have one. They play Hamilton in 3 days. They also lack a bit of physicality up front, and they're missing players in midfield that if the injuries clear up will probably fix. But I thought since last season, I hoped that Raith could bring in Megwa. So to see him going to Partick Thistle, I was dismayed.
You mentioned there's 3 things that happened in the game. Let's talk about these 3 things. In the first game in 15 minutes, where Ewan Murray got himself in a fankle, got the wrong side of Chris Kane, lightly put his hands in his back, put his hands in his back, shoved him over, clear red card. Yeah,
I thought so. It's weird because, like, actually, there was actually 3. As soon as the ball was played, it's difficult to tell for the angle, but certainly as soon as the ball was played forward, there were 3 Raith Rovers defenders closer to the goal than Chris Kane was. But then Chris Kane, in the foot race, Chris Kane beats all of them.
Yeah.
And I presume, but I don't know, and it's hard to tell because I don't know where Dabrowski's starting position was, but I did get the impression that Ewan Murray thought that Dabrowski was going to come for it.
Right.
And that would kind of make sense, because I think where the connection was, it was kind of just outside the penalty area. And I do think if, funnily enough, one of the things I'm going to talk about Dunfermline and their new goalkeeper, Olawayemi, seems to have a really high starting point. He seems really comfortable to play a kind of sweeper-keeper position. Dabrowski less so. And he seemed really deep and he seemed tentative. I'm not saying that Ewan Murray wasn't at fault, but there was certainly hesitation between him and the goalkeeper. But as soon as that hesitation became apparent and Chris Kane capitalised, whether it was a trip and kind of two hands in the back or just two hands in the back, I had no issue with the red card whatsoever.
What about the first goal there? Ewan Otto scoring just after the interval. It's quite a well-worked goal with the ball sort of fed to him at the edge of the area. He shoots, the ball takes an absolutely enormous deflection off Paul Hanlon's backside. I think the goal was given to Ewan Otto just purely by the virtue that it was like perhaps on target. I'd put this down as a Handler own goal because that deflection massively changes the trajectory of the goal. In fact, I don't know if you've had the chance to listen to it. Craig Cairns did a At The Match podcast and he spoke to Ewan Otto after the game and he said that he's definitely claiming it. And I would say, Ewan Otto, show some shame. That's an own goal, sir. That is an own goal.
No, I think it's quite as much as handling. Like, kind of turns. Like, he doesn't turn his back on it, but he certainly turns. And you're right, it hits off him. I am quite happy to give the goal to Ewan Otto. There was interesting listening to James McPake. He says that he has essentially been demanding more goals from Otto, and I really like him. I think he's one of Dunfermline's better players, and I think he's maybe suffered. He's still young, maybe 22. I think he's potentially suffered in terms of he's had to fill in areas, and he's maybe had to play in positions where he does okay and does well and is adept. But I think ultimately I would like to see him. I would like to see him in the middle of the park. I mean, Pig said he would like to see more goals from him, and if you want to disagree with James McPake, then fair enough, but he was very much giving him that goal, and I would agree with him.
I just like the idea of demanding more goals for you, just going up to your players at training before the big game. You better score today. No bother, gaffer. It's like, have you seen the episode of The Simpsons when Homer moves to Cypress Creek to work with Hank Scorpio, and he takes charge of a new team, and he just says, "Can you guys work a bit faster?" "Sure thing, boss." And the guys just all start working if he sits in a hammock. There's somebody out there who will know the reference that I'm talking about, but not today.
There'll be lots of people listening to this podcast who do know that reference. I must admit, I don't. Sorry.
Somebody listening just going like that when they hear the joke.
I mean, I'm not saying they'll laugh at it, but they'll recognise it.
That wasn't a laugh. That was a sound of acknowledgement. David Wotherspoon scored. This was a good goal. He had a long way to run though before he actually shot. Kind of made a long way into the box, cuts inside onto his right foot, and it's a really good effort, quite high into the net. Actually, I remember thinking, could Dabrowski have done better than that? But you actually see the trajectory of the ball. This is just a really well executed goal. Lovely finish. I
mean, I think Wotherspoon has probably had a kind of slow start to his Dunfermline career. What I will say is, I think if he gets 25 yards and 30 seconds or so to do whatever he wants, he will really enjoy the rest of his season. If we're looking at two reasons, again, don't have a right back and out of 10 men, but Ross Matthews at this point is now filling in the right back position after Raith kind of rejigged their lineup. He probably stormed forward and kind of dived in when he didn't have to. That gave Witherspoon the kind of space that he required. However, loads to do. And you're right, when he kind of cut in and when he kind of sent the cross in, it's one of those goals where, like, Dabrowski, rather than dive for it, kind of ambles in the general direction of where the ball was travelling, then goes down on one knee. So aesthetically, it doesn't look great, but regardless, I don't think it would have stopped it anyway. But I would like to see a goalkeeper diving for those kind of attempts at goal.
I like seeing goalkeepers diving. You know, when a shot is going past the post and the goalkeeper knows it's going past the post and he dives and does a couple of like rolls. I like that. Maybe Dabrowski should do that. Then he'd bring you back inside. What's your thoughts on Dabrowski? Is he good?
Yeah, I think so. I think he looks like a goalkeeper who hasn't played very many games in his career. And I think that's the unusual aspect of the fact that he's 26.
Yeah, like Robin Williams in the movie Jack. He looks like an adult, but he's actually a 10-year-old boy.
Similar. That's probably the best comparison you can make. He's very much not the finished article. I mean, I don't know how much players can improve once they're 26. I think it's probably different for a goalkeeper who maybe peak at a different point in their career. I mean, I think we said this last season, the fact that he was 25 and had almost no games under his belt, or very few games under his belt, and I think there's still an aspect of that. I think things are like noticeably in terms of kind of coming for the ball.
Yeah,
still makes errors, but is better at it. His kicking hasn't been great this season, actually, but over the period of last season, it was far better at the end of the season than it was at the start. So I do think there has been a progression, but I certainly wouldn't lay any blame for Friday at his door, certainly.
Are you worried about being bottom of the table?
I am worried about the fact that I am... See, over the summer, so I used the word, and other Rovers fans used the word in terms of over the summer and the start of the season, they talked about a malaise. I think now we can upgrade that word to maybe... I think disarray might be a wee bit too strong. Certainly messy. I think we can upgrade it to that. And I have, at the back of my mind, I have earmarked the game, not this weekend. So Raith Rovers play Hamilton this weekend. I can see that being a draw. Can I guess, is it Greenock Morton that you've got?
No. Is it not? Sorry.
No. The week after Hamilton, so Hamilton this weekend, the weekend after this, it's Falkirk at home.
Oh, right, okay.
I've earmarked that for another upgrade. So an upgrade from malaise to messy to crisis.
Right.
Because okay. I can see Falkirk inflicting a kind of heavy defeat. But I just think this is a squad that isn't... Like, I kind of spoke about this on the kind of preview pod. I know we kind of hark back to it a lot.
Give it a listen if you haven't already.
There hasn't been enough done to rectify the issues that hamstrung the team over the second half of last season. Like seeing Megwa, desperate in need of a right back. Megwa's the perfect answer away to Partick Thistle. There needs to be some physicality in that team. Hasn't been rectified. You look at Neil Collins. As soon as he was appointed, I looked at how he sets a team up. Assuming the websites that I looked at, from his time at Tampa Bay, his last season at Barnsley, 3-5-2. Almost week in, week out, very few deviations from a 3-5-2. And I went on Barnsley's kind of fan forum. They were very critical of how direct that kind of Barnsley team was. And you look at what he has at his disposal at this moment in time. Is it a squad that can play 3-5-2? I don't think so. It is a squad that has very few defenders and very few strikers. So to play a formation that requires more defenders and more strikers than we physically have seems wild. And bear in mind, it's a squad that's reasonably busy with kind of diminutive attacking midfielders. And if he wants to play a long ball, which a lot of the time it has been so far, I'm not entirely sure how that works. So yes, that concerns me. If that was a kind of conversation during his interview stage, and you presume it was, then you kind of struggle to see how he is the man to take the club forward. But I would imagine he also said that he is pragmatic, and maybe this weekend against Hamilton he'll play a back four, which would suit the team a bit more, I suspect. But absolutely, there's concerns here because, I mean, I've watched every single game of every single team that we can in the Championship, and so far, after 5 games, Raith have absolutely been one of the poorer teams.
Neil Collins should play a 3-6-1 with a false 9. I think that would get the best out of this Rovers team based on what you're saying. But we've spoken a long time about the Rovers. What about Dunfermline Athletic? First one of the season, it's taken them off the bottom of the table and into 7th place.
I certainly think it's something to build on. I didn't think, as I say, I didn't watch all 90 minutes. From what I saw, they didn't look great. But what I will say is, similar to maybe the Ayr United game the week before, where they got a decent point against Ayr, I think they look more difficult to break down. I think there's a few things happened. I think James McPake has went to a back 4, which again I think suits the players that he has at his disposal that bit better. We've often spoke about whether Denise Mehmet was was the best goalkeeper that they could possibly get in. I do think that Ola Wayemi is probably an upgrade, and it's interesting that at the centre of that back line, they have a very young back four. Certainly Nguyen at left back, 21. Tom Fogarty on loan from Birmingham, 20. Sam Young started as well at centre half. He's only 18, so a really young back line. But it didn't look like, as much as they're playing because, I presume, because like Benedictus, Rhys Breen, Sam Fisher have either started the season poorly or have a nickel. But certainly they don't look any poorer because of that. So as much as I still think they maybe have issues getting at teams, albeit Witherspoon looked a wee bit better on Friday night, Kane is a pest rather than a goal scorer. There's still issues at that side of the park, up top. But certainly at the back, I just think bringing in a goalkeeper that even just the rest of the team trusts makes a massive, massive difference.
Yeah, definitely. There's nothing worse. We speak about it almost every week on this podcast. There is nothing worse than having a shit goalkeeper. And just before we move on, got to see a very lovely tribute to Sol Bamba before the match. He died very suddenly at the age of 39, spent 2 years at East End Park before moving on to Hibernian. And there's a great banner from the home support, and both sets of fans joined in a tribute to him, a minute's applause. So great to see. Now, Shaughan, I'm going to give you, this is a factoid here, okay? Mm-hmm. And these are some events that happened on the 18th of April, 2023. Mm-hmm. Okay. Netflix ended its DVD rental service after 25 years, citing the reduced demand for physical rentals. Mm-hmm. Fox News and Dominion voting system reached a $787.5 million settlement in the defamation lawsuit, which was initially filed against the network in March 2021 for spreading false claims about the company regarding the 2020 United States presidential election. And Falkirk last lost a league game. They were beaten 2-1 at home to Edinburgh City, and since then, what are we now? That's 15 months. Falkirk are now 43 league matches without defeat, and their outstanding start to the season continued when they recorded their 5th consecutive victory when they beat Airdronians 2-0 at the Excelsior. Dylan Tate scored a stunner, seems to be doing that most weeks, and Sean Mackey got the other, and which was also set up by Dylan Tate. They're now 4 points clear at the top of the championship. United drew with Thistle for the second consecutive stalemate, and Falkirk are the only team in the lower leagues with 100% record. And I know we're saying it only finished 2-0 to Falkirk, but going by the highlights, this could have been about 5 or 6 to Falkirk based on the chances they had.
Yep, this looked like, based on what I saw, and it was like maybe 12-minute highlights. This looked like maybe one of, if not the best performance in the lower leagues this season. I think maybe the only one that would come close, funnily enough, also against Airdrie was Ayr United's hammering of Airdrie earlier in the season. But you're right, I mean, it was 2-0 going on 5 or 6. I mean, Falkirk hit the woodwork a few times. Murray Johnson in the Airdrie net had a pretty good game as well. A few good stops. But it just looks like that this Falkirk squad, certainly as a group of players, just kind of love coming to their work. And I don't just mean a Saturday in terms of match day. I get the impression that they train and love playing together, have the bit between their teeth in terms of keeping this unbeaten record going, and they look like a really fun team to watch. Like everything they do at pace, and I don't just mean like I know we spoke about in the past about if you can add like people in the lower leagues have quality, like most players have quality, but to be able to produce that quality and combine it with pace, that makes a difference. Yeah, and Falkirk have players with pace, but everything they do is quick. So see when they don't have the ball, they press the opponent. See when it's their throw-in, they sprint to take the throw-in. When they have a set piece, they sprint to take the set piece. It's kind of relentless, and eventually it must just wear you down. And this is kind of the impression I got for this game.
Yeah, I like we say, Falkirk looked excellent here, and I think the player of the match, the player of the match, what woke nonsense is this? The man of the match, Dylan Tate, and he scored an absolutely stunning goal to open the scoring. Like just they seem to be doing this on a weekly basis, Falkirk, where they'll get shots about 25 yards from goal and leather them into the top of the net. But beautiful goal in itself, but I actually thought Shaughan Mackie's goal was more aesthetically pleasing of the two. Just as he gets slipped in and his finish at the angle, precision, laser guided finish, just kisses just inside the post. It doesn't touch the post, just kisses inside it. It's a great goal. And Shaughan, I have a proposition for you. I think that Dylan Tate in current form is probably the best player outside the top flight at the moment.
Yeah, probably. I think you might be right. And it's interesting going through when we discussed Falkirk squad even last season and going into this season, and it was like, right, so what do we expect from Falkirk this season? And there was a few, like in a handful of players where you thought, right, they will absolutely perform in the championship. So I thought Brad Spencer and Calvin Miller, for example, they'll definitely do well. Then there was players like Dylan Tate who have produced at this level before, but you're probably going back to COVID times. In terms of when he first emerged at Raith Rovers and was generally playing well, like kind of week in and week out. Since then, he's kind of flattered to deceive in some kind of loan spells, both in the Championship and certainly in League One. And then they had players who have kind of been hot and cold at the Championship, and players that you've never seen before. This is very much a step up. We're interested to see how they're going to cope with the rigours of the Championship. But as much as Tate, I think, has been the standout, I don't think you can point a finger at anybody in this Falkirk team so far that has looked like a kind of weak link. Like even Alfie Aguiman, so somebody who I thought, I wouldn't be surprised if Falkirk maybe looked to maybe move him on in the summer and maybe bring somebody else in. Even players that I thought, and Gary Oliver, and even something like Shaughan Mackie, who has been in the Championship before. I didn't think it was anything startling. But again, he now seems to be their first choice left back, and is, I don't know if thriving is necessarily the right word, but he's certainly doing very, very well. I always thought that Falkirk would do well at the start of the season. Yeah. They would carry the momentum forward and then might regress at some point, but I never expected them to do as well as they have so far.
No. I as always, Shaughan, I completely agree with you. Just they do look a lot of fun to watch, and just on Tate. Like, he's younger than I thought he is. He's only 22. And I really think that this could be the season. If he continues to do well, he could easily get a move to a bigger club back in the top flight. And you look at guys, the obvious comparisons are guys like Lauren Shankland and Kevin Nisbet, who get a move, they start off at a smaller club, get a move to a bigger club, have a couple of unsuccessful loan spells, have to drop into League One, but then they ultimately find their feet at a club and the managers really take to them. The fans really take to him. The managers, for what use the term, unlock a lot of time. Whatever John McGlynn has done to him, because if you remember the first part of last season during his loan spell at Hamilton Accies, he was very ordinary, and now he's just the way that the balance in that midfield between him and Spencer is fantastic. And I do think that if he continues to keep this up, he could get a move to a big club. And ultimately, that's what you want to see. You want to see good players playing at a level as high as they can. Do you think there'd be a worry that, given St Johnstone, for instance, I've just parted company with Craig Levine, do you think they'd be interested in someone like John McGlynn? Or do you reckon his time, it's unlikely that John McGlynn would get a move to, I'm using a bigger club, but you know what I mean, one higher up the food chain than where Falkirk are at the moment?
I think St Johnstone should have somebody like John McGlynn under consideration. I suspect they won't. It sounds like ageism, but I suppose it isn't from me, because I'm saying that they should consider him. but whether John McGlynn is considered a sexy appointment from St Johnstone, probably not. I suspect it'll be not. I suspect somebody like Scott Brown might be more on their radar, I suppose. Yeah. But whether he should be, I'm not so sure. But I'd be very, very surprised if they go for McGlynn.
One of the things I meant to mention about Dylan Tate was I really enjoyed his celebration running over to the Magalot that's at the end and get it right up there and get you in your fucking horrible stop the boats flag and get it right up you.
He seems to do it every week, but I must admit I did last, because you're right, he was already on a booking as well. Because I think he has been booked for bamming it up opposition fans already this season. He doesn't run over, like, whether it makes a difference if he runs over the line, I've no idea. He doesn't do that. He doesn't cross the line. I think he was kind of dragged away as well, which maybe saved him. I suppose you need to be a brave referee that gives a second booking for something like that. But I must admit, it's very, very funny in terms of sprinting over to the Airdrie fans. There is a number of incensed Diamonds fans. I noticed in the top corner, there's fans running past the Union Jacks to remonstrate with them, and then at full time there's a kind of wide angle of that stand, and in the top right hand corner there's no fans and no Union Jacks. So they'd certainly left a wee bit before that.
Now, sticking with Union Jacks actually and flipping them over to the Irish tricolour, Falkirk are playing Celtic this weekend in the League Cup quarter-finals. A huge match for them. I don't know if you saw the preview on the Falkirk website. Did you get a chance to read that?
I didn't know.
I'm going to assume it was written by a very Celtic-leaning member of the Bairns media team. On Sunday, we face our toughest opponent yet this season as we meet Celtic in the Premier Sports Cup quarter-finals. The Premiership champions of the last 3 seasons have started their 2024-25 campaign, as you would expect, with a 100% win record and have scored at least 2 goals in each of their games. However, I wrote that down and then I said, I read later on in the statement, they referred to their win over Rangers as an Old Firm derby win. And you know that Celtic fans would refer to it as a Glasgow derby now, so maybe not. But I just did think that was, quite funny.
I mean, all of that is reasonably factual as well.
Yeah, it's just a wee bit bigging Celtic up a bit too much. And just one final thing on Falkirk. This is supposed to be a tapas. This isn't a tapas. This is a full 18-course meal. This is like something that King Henry VIII would eat. But just want to say a massive, massive well done to Sean Eldebrand. He was on Sports Scene at the weekend doing commentary for the highlights between Ross County and Dundee, and that is very well deserved. For a long time on this podcast, Sean and I have been championing him, and it's great to see him get his opportunities. However, I think if I was a producer at Sports Scene, I'd have called up Lawrence Nelson first. But that's just my personal preference. But nevertheless, well done, Sean. Well done. We'll drop into League One, and we'll talk about the comeback of the weekend. This is perhaps one of the most eye-catching games from the division. Annan Athletic taking on Cali Thistle at the Rex. They came back down from 2 goals. They came back from 2 goals to tie the match. Although Billy Mackay and Callum MacLeod gave Cali Thistle the lead, it was cancelled out by Connor Salmon and Luke Donnelly, just 3 minutes between their goals. And that's Alloa, top of the table, one of 2 unbeaten sides in League One. The other's Dumbarton, but they just draw all the time, so there's not an interest in talking about that. And Sean, how long into Duncan Ferguson's post-match interview... How long into Duncan Ferguson's post-match interview did it take for him to mention plastic pitches?
27 seconds.
27 seconds, thank you.
You know something? I am starting to go. I was going to say full circle, but that wouldn't make any sense because that means you're back to the beginning again. I think I'm starting to come around at 180 degrees in terms of Duncan Ferguson. I thought he might be a bit of a neep and that he doesn't come across well in interviews. But now I just think his interviews are hugely funny. And he is potentially a national treasure. Listening to him at the weekend was incredible. I loved him saying that they're still unbeaten apart from the defeat against Annan. Duncan, tell you that.
That's what he says as well. He's like, we're unbeaten this season apart from that game against Annan.
Still unbeaten works.
Oh, just hopeless. That's like, I don't know, like complaining about the pitch because it's become as we've mentioned a number of times. I'm going to say turn it into a drinking game, but you just do it once. That's you just get that's it. Do it once, you get a mild buzz. That's all. That's not much of a drinking game. I suppose it's a timer as to how long into the interview it's going to take him to mention it. But Cali Thistle fans, I am sure, do not care what kind of surface they're playing on. They know they're playing in League One, where I think it's 7 of the 10 teams all play on synthetic surfaces. It's something you're just going to have to adapt to. Why does he keep on complaining about them?
I mean, he said it, and I'm sure he said it last season. He referenced the fact that he doesn't like plastic pitches. And we referenced it at that point and say, well, good luck, Duncan, because almost everybody in League One is playing on plastic. The thing is, as much as I think Inverness fans are in a kind of strange place right now in terms of they are happy at the fact that Alan Savage now has control of the club. But I think the majority of them would prefer it if Duncan Ferguson wasn't in charge of the team. And I totally get that. I totally get that. But from watching them albeit just in highlights forms, every week this season. It does feel like they create a lot of chances. Like even in this game, like they created a number of chances. They should have been, and I will agree with Duncan Ferguson in terms of this. But I think he said it at some point, if they'd been 3 or 4 up before Alloa got the first, nobody could really have quibbled with it. And right, okay, I appreciate he's biased. But they had like a few 3-on-2s, they had a few very good opportunities, and that's not a one-off. Like the defeat at Annan that he referenced, they missed a load of chances. The 1-1 draw against Montrose, they missed a load of chances. Now, you would think either they'll eventually get better at taking those chances, or the chances might dry up. I suppose it would be the opposite. But I still think they might come good.
I've got a funny feeling as well they're going to come good. I know that, I mean, there'll be people who will watch Inverness Caledonian Thistle far more often than you and I will be like, you guys are talking rubbish, you don't know what you're saying. However, you can only really go by, like we say, how we, Shaughan and I do this podcast, it's predominantly match highlights, but you look for comments on social media, you look at the stuff that's posted on Pie and Ball, help give you a more robust view of how the matches have gone. So they will obviously know a bit better than me, but I'm the same. I've just got a feeling that Cali Thistle in time will come good. I think at the start of the season, I actually thought that if they do well to finish in 8th place, given just, I suppose that was a period when there was immense turmoil at the club and there didn't look like there was any light at the end of the tunnel. We are seeing chinks of light at this as they approach what you assume is going to be the end of a tunnel. And I do think that there's probably going to come a time they're going to scud someone. But I did think it was quite funny where, I think it's Mikko Virtanen tries to play the ball out from the back. He gives it straight to Billy Mackay. And Billy Mackay shoots but fluffs his chance and he looks straight down at the surface. You know, like he's like David Beckham when he took that penalty against Turkey and sent it into orbit. The first thing he did was start looking at the pitch. That sort of low stakes version of that. And
you know something, it might very well be that like the fact that Duncan Ferguson goes on about it so often that it starts to filter through in terms of players about, oh yeah, we're playing another shite pitch this week. I mean, he even referenced it at the end of the conversation about we're back at home next week, we're back on grass, and it's like, you know something, stop making such a big deal about this. Yeah. I did like when he said that when they went 2-0 up, he said that a team like us, with what is surely the best defensive record in Scotland, you wouldn't expect us to concede 2 goals. Now, I know he was meaning going into the last 20 minutes of this game, but I had a quick look around all of the divisions, and there's 13 teams have conceded fewer goals than Inverness.
So are we going to have to treat like Duncan Ferguson interviews like Donald Trump's presidential debates? He has to be fact checked in real time. Like he's talking about, we're unbeaten all season, and he says, "Hey, sorry, Mr. Ferguson, we actually lost at Annan a couple of weeks ago. We've got one of the best defences in the whole of Scotland, actually, sir. There's 13 teams who are stingier than us."
It's easier to fact check when your interviews only last 3.5 minutes, rather than Donald Trump that's lasted about like 90.
Got to say though, like we're talking a lot about Inverness Caledonian Thistle. I thought that Connor Salmon's goal was really, really, really good because that ball effectively starts off when the move starts. I think it's on Alloa's byline.
I think Stephen Hetherington. It's like a kind of long ball forward, and Stephen Hetherington is essentially his own corner flag. Yeah. I don't know who he kind of takes the ball around, but you're right. Essentially, the move starts on Alloa's byline, is then moved up the left-hand side. Really well worked, kind of cross fields to the back to the right. Was it Cammy O'Donnell crossed it in, and then a really good kind of looping header from Connor Salmon.
He's leaning backwards to head it, and he puts it effectively almost the same direction it comes from. Really, really nice, but really difficult for the goalkeeper to save. And then Salmon sets up Donnelly for the equaliser. A really nice flick from Salmon and a good finish from Donnelly. Salmon, again, he talked to Alloa fans. I think they've got a very different opinion. When he played against Stenhousemuir earlier this season, and the highlights I've seen, I think he's quite a very useful, quite a very useful player in some regard. I think he's if you work the ball into his feet, he can do good things with it, and he's built like the side of a shed as well, man. He is a big fella.
It's funny. I do think this Alloa team is a kind of poorer side than the Wasps team that was in League One last time, but here we are, the top league. I did laugh at Andy Graham when he was asked by the interviewer after the game about the fact that they were top of the league. Andy Graham almost seemed quite annoyed at the fact that he was asked about it. It means nothing to me. But it's just, I do think there is very little. I don't want to say it's a poor quality division, but let's just say there is very little between a lot of teams in this league.
See, I think it's, if you were to ask, like, say for instance, ask John McGlynn about being top of the league, or ask like Ryan Strachan and Jordan Brown about being top of the league, I think those guys could be like legitimately, yeah, I've had great starts to the season. Whereas Alloa is just like goal difference, and it's so bunched up at the top of the table. So I can understand why Andy Graham was quite keen to bat that question off. One final thing in that match, I thought James Nolan should have been sent off for that tackle on Luke Donnelly.
It was high and it was late, and I kind of I didn't think he had been sent off, and then I was like, oh, maybe I'm just not aware that he's been sent off, and the referee would come back and do so, but obviously that didn't happen.
Total shitebags tackle as well. He seems to be looking away, like he's gone into it and twisted his body, and he's gone high up and looking away from it. So he was lucky to stay in the pitch, and Donnelly was lucky that he was able to continue the match. If he was able to continue the match, I don't know, because I don't have the team lines in front of me. There was no serious harm done. But nevertheless, Duncan Ferguson, we'll see you next week, and we'll look forward to timing how long it takes you to say something about the plastic pitch. They're at home next week. So
he won't say anything. He won't say anything about plastic pitch next week.
Because I'm going to ask you, so up next, you're playing whoever it is they're playing. Oh, it's a tough game and plastic pitch and so on. So wait and see how it goes. If they played in a plastic pitch, it's going to be early. If they're about to play in a plastic pitch, it is going to be later on. But don't you worry, dear listener. He will find a way to shoehorn it in there. Shaughan will very briefly touch on Montrose's 3-0 win over Stenhousemuir. Goals from Kane Hester, Ryan Williamson and Aidan Quinn gave Stuart Petrie's men a very deserved victory. And there's not really too much to say about this game. Montrose were the superior side, took advantage of some very slack play from the Warriors, but a bit of a disappointing afternoon for me for a number of reasons. And as always, when it comes to talking about the Warriors, I'm going to hand you the microphone.
So what was the most? I mean, I'm presuming that the result was the most disappointing, but I believe there was some kind of issue in terms of getting a ticket for the match as a Stenny fan.
I'm going to give you something that's even more disappointing. A guy mistook me for Craig Fowler.
Oh, you wouldn't be happy at that.
He said it in passing. I was talking to a couple who watch A View from the Terrace, and they were asking when it's coming back and so on, and we were talking a wee bit about the game, and the guy walked by and said something like, "Oh, Fowler, get your hand in your pocket and get a 50-50 ticket."
Were you wearing a t-shirt featuring a rapper, and that's about how you got confused?
Yeah, it was Death Row Records. It was somebody sitting in an electric chair, so it's an easy mistake to make. And I think I had a cornflake in my beard as well. So yeah, I can understand why he may have come to that conclusion. But yeah, it was and on top of that as well, just like another. Actually, I've written this down. Another aspect to hell. There was 4 aspects of hell from this. The other one, I got talking to a guy who he listens to this podcast every week, and I'm really sorry because I didn't catch his name, but he's a really nice guy. He's come to a game between Arbroath and Stenny in a couple of weeks' time. Really cool guy, really good to talk to him. But he was saying, like, oh, listen to the podcast every week. I'm really looking forward to seeing Mikey Anderson because you've been talking about him the past 18 months. Really keen to see how he gets on. I said, Mikey Anderson, great player. You know, we're lucky to have him. Who gives away the ball in a very dangerous area for Kane Hester to score?
Mikey Anderson?
Yes. The first thing that went through my head was I wasn't embarrassed about the team going a goal there. I was, oh Christ, that guy's going to think I'm a fucking idiot. So there you go. Mistaken for Fowler, looks like an idiot. And then the issues that you had getting in, because Montrose often say this about Montrose, and I think it's like universally accepted that it is one of the best away days in the football calendar. But for the first time having gone there, I did feel a wee bit let down, because I felt as though Montrose made it difficult for away supporters to get into the game and to enjoy themselves when they're in the stadium, when they don't really need to do that.
Yeah.
Like, first of all, you had to buy a ticket in advance. Like, pay at the gate wasn't an option for away fans. It was an option for home supporters, but it wasn't an option for away fans. So it's not a big deal, but it's the sort of thing that can put you off when you've got to log in online, you've got to give your details to whoever and pay 18 quid for a ticket. It's not ideal. But I tried to order the ticket on my phone, and my phone wouldn't let me do it. The phone basically was a restricted site, wouldn't let me do it from the link that Stenny had posted on their Twitter page. So then I had to get it on my laptop, go into the Montrose website. Don't ask me why I had to go from one to the other. I just did, having the disappointment on my phone. But there was somebody else who tried to access it, and it took them to like a porn link. So it depends what device you could try and access it on your work phone, for instance, just for speed. You could get in a bit of bother for that. So that was a bit daft. And then when you like, I like getting in the ground early, but I just went in the home gate. Nobody checked it was an away ticket. And then you hear stories about people being sent to the gates for the away fans, being told, oh, actually, we don't take card here, and then being sent away again. And it's just, I don't understand why. It's a small Scottish football team. There's about 350 people at the game. You would want to make it difficult for folk to get in. It doesn't need to be like that.
I think from what I read, that after kind of advertising that you couldn't pay at the gate, actually once you arrived as an away fan, you could pay at the gate.
Yeah. So I don't understand why it was as confusing as that. You know what I mean? I was thinking about old people that have to buy, like, would have to go on and buy. Older people, perhaps not as digitally literate as us young bucks. And I had a lot of sympathy for the guy at Hamilton who gave £1 million to those Nigerian fellas, because maybe he too was trying to buy a digital ticket for Montrose and he got confused and he got duped.
See, talk about Hamilton, see the fact that they've reduced their ticket price from £26 to £25, but bumped up every other price by considerably more. Incredible. Fair play, what a club, Hamilton.
So you've reduced adult tickets. We listen to the fans. We've reduced the adult tickets by £1. Okay, it's not perfect, but thank you for listening to supporters. Yes, but we've bumped up the cost for an under 18s at like £8 to like £13.
Perth and Chelgate are up 7. Incredible club. Anyway, sorry. No, Montrose steady.
We should have had that. That should have been one of the main talking points when we were talking about the championship, because that was ridiculous. That's just completely backwards economics. But yeah, and then you get into the ground, and for some reason, like when you think about going to a day at Links Park, what's the best thing about it? The option to go behind one of the goals for the first half, and then if you want to go and stand behind the opposite end for the second half. That option was denied to us. We had to go and were segregated into a portion of the stand. Now, the stand at Links Park, got to say, it's a great place to watch football because it's very steep and you get a really good view of the game. I got a really good view of Mikey Anderson giving the ball away for the opening goal. But it just felt as though, why are you putting like such a small group of people into like kettling them? Now, I use the word kettling quite lightly, but why would you want to do that instead of just taking away one of the best things about the ground? I know Arbroath do it as well, and it might have made sense in the Championship when you're playing teams like Dundee United and Kilmarnock, or who will bring big supports and they're more difficult to manage. But Stenny have got a really small travelling support. Just let the fans do what they want within reason. There's Stenny self-policing. I'm in with the fans. A lot of self-policing goes on. Let them go and stand behind the goals. Let them move around. Don't take away these simple pleasures, because I'll no doubt I'll be back at Montrose later on in the season, but there's a younger group of guys have started to follow on the team over the last like 5 or 6 years. They haven't had the chance to go to Montrose, and the older folk were saying brilliant away day, absolutely superb away day, and you actually felt a bit, I'm sorry I bigged up as much just because of stuff like that, like the segregation, the tickets. I saw
I did see a lot of comments about it online, so hopefully Montrose will kind of take that on board, and then for the next time Stenny are in town, then there will be no segregation and they can swap ends at half time.
Yeah, I hope so. Because like I say, Montrose are a club that I have got a lot of time for. I think a club that we've got a lot of time for, given the stuff we've done. We're good friends with Barry O'Neill, one of the directors there. I've got Paul Watson, the captain, on Instagram. Just again, another day of humiliation. When I was walking, I'd gone in like I mentioned there, I'd gone in a different gate from the away fans. And when I saw the away fans going up and into the stand, I thought I'll go and join them. So I had to go into the stand, and you go past like the Montrose substitute. So Paul Watson was sitting there. So I said all right to him, shook his hand, and I asked him, how you feeling about it today? And he's like, it's got a tough game, but I fancy. I says, I think it's going to be 3-0 to Stenny. And then when I was driving up the road, stopped, pulled over to get something to eat, and I messaged on Instagram him and his teammates in the car just all grinning. And I thought, yeah, that's Let's put my high gas at a low peak. So yeah. Saturday was an afternoon of humiliations. Aye,
I got the impression that 3-0 was a wee bit harsh. As much as Montrose deserved to win, 3-0 might have been a bit harsh.
Yeah, aye. I think that the Stenny gifted them the 2 goals. I was watching the highlights back, and it really looks like a glitch happened. It's like all of a sudden, like where do these Montrose players come from? Like Kane Hester's goal, it's like how did he? Where does a Stenny players disappear to allow him to get in? And same with Williamson's goal. Williamson had a great game, by the way. Ryan Williamson had a really, really good game. Really impressive at fullback. But yeah, when Aidan Quinn scored at the end to put it through, I thought, that makes it look a lot harsher than what it was. I broadly agreed with Gary Naismith's post-match interview. But I think it's for Stenny, it's you're stepping up a level. You can't dally in the ball. You're going to have to be switched on all the time, because Montrose are a hard team. They're a streetwise side. They're quite canny. And just even wee things like niggly wee fouls and just being hard. There was the goal, I don't think they showed in the highlights, but Ross Taylor went in for a 50-50 with Terry Masson, and Taylor went down looking for a foul, and it wasn't a foul, just a clean, very, very hard but very, very fair tackle, and that set in motion Ryan Williamson's goal. And it just, you can't do that. Like Montrose, remember, one of my mates looked at Montrose's team line and he saw Gardine and Masson in the middle of the park, so a few run over the top of him. Gardine strolled it. I say that, Michael Gardine absolutely strolled it. Just things like that, just his touch and the way, you see players who are just good footballers and the way they use their body, their hips just to create space for himself. Gardine was doing that all afternoon, and Masson had a really good game. So yeah, Montrose very good, not so good for Stenhousemuir, and yeah, that's all there is to say. Somebody thought I was Craig Fowler, so not ideal. Very quickly, Shaughan, we'll talk about Arbroath's new management team getting off to a bad start. After 2 draws in League One and a win over Montrose in the Challenge Cup, David Gold and Colin Hamilton were appointed the co-managers of the Lichties on a permanent basis, and inevitably, they kicked off their reign by losing 2-1 to Queen of the South at Palmerston.
I mean, I think I'm kind of relieved. I wondered if, the fact that they had Dick Campbell, a proper football man, I suppose. They went for Jim McIntyre, who maybe is like a bit quieter. Whether Jim McIntyre is in the proper football man clique, I'm not so sure. And I was a wee bit worried that they'd maybe go for something like John Hughes, for example.
Worried? I would have embraced it.
I mean, it would have been. I would be worried if I was an Arbroath fan, I suppose. It would have been very funny, I think, if they'd appointed Hughes. But I think Colin Hamilton and David Gold makes a lot of sense in terms of it brings back the kind of good feeling, I suppose, it has been lacking at Gayfield for at least a couple of years now. And I think it feels like they've addressed a few things that were an issue in terms of middle of the park. I think Ryan Flynn feels like a decent addition. We said that they were lacking something in the middle of the park. I think Scott Stewart, moving him forward a wee bit further, is probably going to help the team. I do think they have a hard job, though, considering, as much as I think that those are good moves, judging by what I saw at the weekend, I thought Queen of the South were worthy winners and 2-1 and maybe could have won by more on the day. And as much as I still think that Arbroath have a decent team, I think the other thing that they have to try and figure out is how do you get Callum Gallagher and Gavin Riley maybe playing together, if that's at all possible? Because if they want to play one up front, I think Callum Gallagher is a goal scorer. Whether he's somebody that can lead the line and do the things that you want from a lone striker, not so sure. Whereas Gavin Riley is somebody who can do all the other things that a lone striker can do, but probably won't necessarily get you 15 goals, for example. So that seems to be the kind of final sticking point, I think, for this team. But ultimately, they didn't create. They missed a couple of chances against Queen of the South. But I think Queen of the South should have won by more, judging by what I saw at the weekend.
You can go by the highlights. I actually think that our Queen of the South deserved the win, but Arbroath could probably be a bit disappointed that they didn't capitalise on the chances, because they did create some pretty good chances at points. Stewart missed a really good chance. Riley put one over the bar from close range. Riley missed actually 2 decent chances. They're kind of similar to the point you were making about Inverness Caledonian Thistle. They are making chances.
I think that they probably missed the best chances in the game, but Queen of the South created more openings, if that makes sense. I still thought that Queen of the South were the better team on the day by a good chunk.
Yeah, and I thought as well that Queens didn't really have to work all that hard for their goals. You see the one where, like, Kieran McKechnie, when he picks up the ball about 25 yards from goal, he's able to turn on it, take a touch, and then put a shot. And it's a really, like, very, very well finished goal. Just the angle, and I think that's actually the second time. I need to go and credit. I think the second time we've spoken about a really laser guided keeping goal from Kieran McKechnie, but the second one from Rhys Lyon, it's a short corner. And initially I thought, could Aidan McAdams done better? There's about 6 bodies standing in front of him, so I don't think you can blame the goalkeeper in this one. But the fact the short corner is able to work to the edge of the area and no one thinks to pick up someone as good as Rhys Lyon, you think, those 2 goals could have been preventable. However, up next is Annan Athletic. I suppose if you're going to try and get your season back on track, Annan are decent opponents. Kind of started well, form's dipped a little bit. Needed a last minute goal to beat 10-man Dumbarton on Saturday. 10-man Dumbarton with a schoolboy in goals. Literally a schoolboy.
You would expect them to win, but you know what I was thinking about in terms of a comparison? Remember when there was another kind of underperforming League One team that appointed, I suppose in this occasion, a single manager? It was like, right, Marvin Bartlett, Queen of South. This feels like an ideal opportunity for him. Surely he can make a good team in League One underperforming. Surely he can only make them better. And it feels like a similar situation in Arbroath. I'm not saying that the same will occur, but I think they'll do well. I think they'll do okay. But at the back of my head, there is still that comparison about Bartlett, Queen of South.
We'll drop into League Two, and League Two there was a lot of fun this weekend because 4 of the 5 games featured last gasp goals. Rory McAllister, one of the very best to ever do it, got his 251st goal of his career as Peterhead beat Stirling Albion late on, and Russell Dingwall scored a free kick in the 95th minute as Elgin City came back to beat Bonnyrigg Rose. But we're not focusing on either of those games. We're perhaps going to focus on the most underperforming side in the lower league so far this season, and that is Clyde Football Club. Ian McCall's struggling side required an injury time penalty to equalise against the supposedly worst side in the SPFL. 1-1 draw at home to Edinburgh City. And what makes this match really interesting to talk about is this is the second time the teams have already met this season. They played each other in the League Cup group stages, and Clyde won that match 5-0. And they looked miles ahead of the Citizens at that point. And while I don't think you can really read too much into games in the League Cup group stages, because mostly it's teams, like full-time teams taking on part-time teams, there's a difference in division and so on. I do think that when teams from the same league play each other, that's a useful barometer. And based on what we saw just like about 2 months ago, those were sides that would be finishing opposite ends of League Two. Now, you look at Clyde and you think, geez, you guys are in a lot of bother. Whereas Edinburgh really seem to be quite, like, if they can stop giving away fucking last minute penalties, Edinburgh are going to be, really, that's the second time. They did it last week against Queen's Park in the League Cup, the Challenge Cup, they gave away a last minute penalty. They did it here again. But Edinburgh have got, I think I wouldn't say a feel-good factor at Edinburgh, but there's certainly signs for optimism at Edinburgh. And I definitely don't think you can say that about McCall's team.
No, totally. And even though Clyde have struggled this season, and even though Edinburgh have probably performed above expectations, I still thought Clyde would win this. Like, you still just keep expecting Clyde to kick in at some point. We thought they would win this league, kind of no bother at all, kind of thing. But watch the highlights. It wasn't. It feels like Clyde are reasonably easy to play against. Like, it feels like they're one paced. It feels like they struggle to break up the attacks of an opponent. And in terms of, I don't know if either goalkeeper was particularly busy, but it's not as if Mark Weir in the Edinburgh goal was having to make 3 or 4 stops to deny Clyde. And I don't think that Edinburgh were particularly fortunate to be a goal up. I thought it was a really, really good finish from Connor Young, and certainly Michael McIndoe afterwards said that they were the dominant side. I don't know if I necessarily got that from my eyes, but bear in mind it was Clyde's highlights that I watched, so that might be have a slightly different kind of hat on, I suppose, in terms of how it puts its highlights package together. But regardless, like, if Clyde were the better team, I mean, it wasn't by much whatsoever.
Yeah. We'll talk about Connor Young's goal. First of all, it's a really, really well worked goal. I've seen you using that a lot, well worked, but it is. There's probably I think there's 6 or 7 passes before the ball's played into his feet. And it's a nice, he's got his back to goal. He has got a lot of time. I'm not 100% sure who it was that was marking him, but no one gets tight to him. No one stops and think he's got to play with his back to goal and he's got to find someone. He's able to come in, and it's a good finish as well. Kinnear was at full stretch and couldn't get it. Favourite thing about this, Edinburgh City on their Twitter page posted the goal, and you can hear Dave laughing in the background. He says, "Yes, fucking get in there, man. Go on, son." And he's doing this high-pitched laugh in the background as well. Brilliant. That's exactly what you want. And you contrast that. There's a bit where the Clyde commentator, I'm sure they must have been talking about Eden Lynch, because he talked about him, a player who's joined from Stenhousemuir, so it has to be Eden Lynch. And the co-commentator said something like, Stenhousemuir had a successful season, but they weren't successful against Clyde. There's 1 win apiece and 2 draws, albeit Clyde's win was a 6-1. But let's remember, one team won the division at a canter, the other one struggled to survive, so shut up. Simple as that. Shut up.
And a strange angle to come at it from a kind of Clyde Stenny
that'll
perspective.
show Eden Lynch. Yeah, that'll show Eden Lynch. Oh, he came on as a sub in that 6-1 game. You really put his high gas at a low peep. But yeah, Edinburgh are a team. We spoke about them. Fraser Clark and I spoke about them last week. So I was really impressed with them and their loss at Queen's Park. They've got you can contrast the teams and it just shows how things have completely flipped around since that League Cup meeting between them. But Edinburgh, you can really see what they try to do with the ball. You can really see they've got a sense of purpose. They'll have Sam Jones sort of playing in the number 10 role. You've got Connor Young playing as an orthodox number 9. You've got James Stokes who will buzz off them and try to hang on the shoulder of the last defender and run in behind and try to get in there. You can see what they want to do. Whereas Clyde, what are they trying to do? I'm thinking, you look at Edinburgh, look at the 2 strikers they've got for there. You look at Clyde, I was probably got carried away talking about Logan Dunnicky after that goal that he scored against Partick Thistle. He was substituted at half time here, didn't really have much of an impact in the game. I wonder if this experiment is
almost feels like it's muddied the water a wee bit. It's like, it turns out I may have another forward here in Logan Dunnicky, and actually probably you don't.
Yeah, and no harm to the guy, because
totally.
I think it was something worth trying, but we're not really. I suppose he did quite well against Bonnyrigg. We spoke about the game against Bonnyrigg when they lost that 2-1, and I thought the consensus was that he played well. He got sent off in that match, didn't he?
Yes,
he did. Aye.
So he didn't do that well.
Yeah, sorry, but he closed. I think he closed down. Tom Ritchie, the Bonnyrigg goalkeeper. They closed down Ritchie, and which led to, it was Connor Scullion scoring, or whoever it was that scored, whatever. But then the point is, I wonder if it's here's me just like old man Telfer here, just trying to remember if he'd remember to take his diabetes medicine this morning. I wonder if that experiment's worth persisting with. And I suppose that if we were to take any positive from this game from a Clyde perspective, at least Jordan Allen scored. Albeit it was from a last minute penalty, but there was a fair degree of pressure in that, because if Clyde had lost this game, that's a devastatingly bad result. Whereas this is just a mild embarrassment. Yeah,
but they have, I think, their next 3 games, and I'm not entirely sure what order they have it, but it's maybe something like Elgin, then Peterhead, then Spartans.
Yeah,
maybe it might be the next 3.
There's 3 of the best teams in the division there.
Now, don't get me wrong. If they click and they go on a run, then fair enough. You might say, okay, well, maybe they can still get promoted, whether it's via winning the league. Which, I mean, bear in mind they're already 11 points behind Peterhead, but still, you still wouldn't say they can't qualify for the playoffs or whatever. But consider how they've performed so far, 5 points from 5 games. I wouldn't fancy their chances against any of those 3 teams. It was disappointing. Quite frustrating. You don't necessarily hear from Ian McCall.
Got that down
after
in my
the Clyde
notes.
Games.
Yeah, I've got that down in my notes there. I think the last interview he gave, it was certainly Mark Kerr spoke after the Bonnyrigg defeat, and we've not had any post-match interviews since. And that's a shame, because Clyde's media offering so far this season has been really, really good, and you do want to hear what Ian McCall's thoughts are. But I just wonder if it's. Do you wonder if he comes out this final quarter and there's no improvement, and say teams like Stranraer and Edinburgh and even Forfar, Christ, are nudging ahead of them, you wonder if there might be a change being made there, because there's a lot of money. There's a lot of money being spent on that squad, and they're not getting value for money.
So you're absolutely right, and I think under normal circumstances, then you would say yes, McCall might be out the door if things don't turn around after those next 3 games that we've just mentioned. However, in the last week, might not be true, but it feels like Clyde certainly have some kind of... haven't budgeted correctly for this season.
Yes, I've got that down here. Alan Maitland stepped down as the chairman. Apparently there was talk of a black hole in the club's finances. They've overspent in putting the team together. So
if there's already a black hole and how they managed to recoup that, then how on earth can you afford to pay off presumably a reasonably well-paid League Two manager? So something like that might allow him to stick around even for a bit further.
Yeah, maybe. Could be the case. But then, given that what's at stake if you finish bottom...
See, the thing is, like, I think they won't. Like, I think even if... I think there's a real potential here for Clyde to have a poor season by what anybody, or everyone, predicted, but not so poor that a team that we thought could win the league handsomely, I think we both predicted. I still don't see them finishing last, for example. I can see them maybe finishing mid-table or maybe even slightly lower. I can't imagine that they will finish bottom of the pile in League Two, considering how much quality they have about them.
I remember the season where they brought David Goodwillie in, for instance. Prior to him coming in, I think it was Barry Ferguson's final season, I actually thought they had a decent team that could kick on. I can't quite remember exactly who was involved in the team, but on paper it was a decent group of players that could kick on and challenge for the playoffs again. Surprised what they did the previous season. 16-17 that season would have been. And they completely tanked. And it took until getting David Goodwillie in, and let's be honest, we all know why David Goodwillie had dropped to playing for Clyde. But having to bring in somebody who in a million years you had never been able to sign, who scored the goals that ultimately kept them up. And it feels like the team there where you're too good to go down. And I'm not sure if that's the case here, because we've not really seen, even when going back to January, when they were able to register the better players, get rid of the junk that Brian McLean and Jim Duffy signed, and bring in blue chip high quality players. Even then, still wasn't a massive turnaround, and they managed to finish. They managed to stay up by the skin of their teeth. So I just think since McCall's come in, I don't think he has maximised the most from the money that he's had to spend there.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with that whatsoever. I still think that there is, consider maybe about 7-8 weeks ago we were kind of lauding this Clyde squad about how much quality it had about it compared to everybody else. And I'm still not ready to write it off, but I do acknowledge what you're saying.
Yeah, got to say though, man, what watching the highlights back from this, I was so annoyed at that penalty they conceded. Josh Gregor, what are you doing tackling someone like that at that stage of the game?
And I don't think he was going anywhere. I don't think he was going anywhere at that point.
It's a really, really bad tackle. Really, really bad tackle. But and it must be frustrating. McIndoe must be tearing his hair out after that. I mean, he said in his post-match interview, he reckons he's been the manager for about 12 months since he came in to replace Alan Maybury. He reckons he's used about 57 players in the 12 months he's been at the club.
He did insist that they will move up the table though, so I will hold him to that.
I said that to Fraser, and I'm repeating myself this week. I hope Edinburgh do well. I thought, and I still do think they'll be the first side to get promoted, who've been promoted into the SPFL, that will ultimately drop back out. But like I say, I'm taken by Michael McIndoe. I like Eden Lynch. I like there's an AI thumbs up. Great use for people who are listening to this. You can't see it, but I just gave the thumbs up there, and it auto generated a thumb up on Riverside. But yeah, like McIndoe, like Lynch, like John Robertson, like Josh Gregor, a lot of ex-Stenny in that team. So I quite like them.
Do you like Michael McIndoe more since you read his autobiography?
Haven't finished it, and that doesn't reflect well on me because the font in it's absolutely enormous.
And you bought it ages ago.
I'd bought it ages ago as well. You know, I mean, I would say these podcasts take a long time to research, so that's why I haven't had the chance to read
Duncan
it.
Duncan Mackay would have finished it like that.
I don't think Duncan Mackay reads his books properly. I think there's a lot of... Duncan Mackay's got a wide knowledge, but there's not a lot of depth to his knowledge. I mean, I'll just say this, Duncan, if you're listening, there's a lot more to reading books than by just reading a couple of paragraphs in the back with the reviews.
I just presumed he was a very quick reader. Are you casting aspersions on his reading ability?
No, I'm casting aspersions on his truth telling. That's what I'm doing. Now, Shaughan, if there's a case to be made about Clyde keeping on Ian McCall, is there anything to be said about Forfar Athletic keeping on Mr. Raymond McKinnon? Because the Loons, they looked as though they were heading towards a point against the Spartans, but Kieran Watson had other ideas and got the only goal of the game and a 1-0 win for... The Spartans don't have a nickname, do they? It's just the Spartans.
The Spartans.
The Spartans. He got the goal of the game. But the Spartans won 4-0. McKinnon's in bother.
I mean, Ray McKinnon was... he was quite enthusiastic after the game.
He was. He says he thought some of the guys had an excellent performance. Yeah. He doesn't feel they're too far away. Would have taken something from it normally. And
their Twitter feed, they said that Spartans did they say they'd stolen the game or something along those lines? It all felt very bitter in terms of their last minute tweet.
I've got to say, I spoke to an associate of ours about this game. I don't want to say too much in case they lose his identity, but they did have a very good view of the match from the Spartans bench, and they said that Forfar were probably worth a point all in.
Well, there you go. I wonder who that was.
I've said too much. I've said too much. But regardless of whether or not Forfar merited a point, it's just another bad result in what has been a bad season for Forfar. Like, the second time this season they've conceded a last-minute goal. They're the lowest scorers in the division with just 3, and one of those was an own goal. They've brought in Bradley Rodden after he left Bonnyrigg Rose. I'm not sure if he's going to be the answer to this use. And it just feels like Forfar, every time we talk about them, just a real sense of drift. There's not a lot going on there.
Yeah, I don't really understand it. I mean, I know there are Forfar fans who feel that maybe Ray McKinnon is quite chummy with members on the board, and maybe that's one of the reasons why he, I suppose, is still in situ. But this isn't a new situation. I mean, Forfar had a poor season last time around. They've started this campaign again very, very poorly, and it's the kind of similar problems. Don't create chances, don't score goals. I mean, they really get hammered. I mean, they normally lose games very, very narrowly. But there is nothing. Ray McKinnon has demonstrated nothing so far to suggest that he is the right man for the job. And unless the board are thinking to themselves, we've given McKinnon a really, really small budget to work with, and keeping Forfar's heads above water and finishing above that 10th position is maybe about as good as we can expect this season, and I do think it's a poor squad, then maybe that would explain it, and maybe they still have faith in him. But I think there's very little happening on the park that suggests that he is the right man for the job.
Yeah, I was looking at Forfar over the past few seasons, Wikipedia mostly, but it really does feel since Jim Weir left the club, it's just been... everything's been downgraded. So, if you remember, Jim Weir had the team finishing... it was second or third in League One. That was a very good side. Dylan Easton, Thomas Riley, John Baird, fantastic players. And then Jim Weir the following year had to step away after a car accident. While he recovered, he couldn't give Forfar the time that the role deserved. And then just since then, it's like they were relegated. Appreciate it was like the COVID season in 2021-22. Then they finished second in League Two. They missed out on promotion via the playoffs. And then since then, it's like they fell outside the playoffs the next year. And then the last season, where you're a couple of games away from finishing bottom of the table. And it just feels like for Forfar, I often, when I think of Forfar, I think like a really good part-time club where they can sign good players who want to go there. And you can have you can be at Forfar as a player for about 4 or 5 years, just because the club's just a good place to be in. And that just doesn't seem to be the case anymore.
No. Now it just seems to be a place where St Johnstone can send teenagers. And essentially, and that's, the bottom half of League Two is a tough learning ground for these boys.
I just like that, the idea of Forfar Athletic being like Pleasure Island from Pinocchio, where St Johnstone send all these bad boys who get turned into jackasses and then get put to work. I just like Ray McKinnon with a big whip, just like giving them ginger beer and all that, and then they turn into donkeys. Really scary, actually. That I watched it on YouTube. That the Pleasure Island scene, it's quite frightening, especially when the guy starts laughing and then he does a big "ee-haw" and then realizes what's happening, and his ears come shooting out through his hat. I think that's the only bit of that scene I've seen.
The whole scene from Pinocchio.
I don't know if I've watched Pinocchio all the way through.
He lives inside a whale for a little bit.
Oh, I've not seen that bit.
All right, that's towards the end. Geppetto goes to rescue him.
Pinocchio lives inside a whale for a bit.
Yeah, he gets sucked up by a whale, has to live in a whale, and Geppetto goes into... Or is it Geppetto gets sucked up by a whale? They live in a whale for a little bit and then decide to light a fire, and the whale sneezes and sends them all flying. Oh, that's right, and Pinocchio washes up on the shore and they think he's dead, but then the fairy godmother comes down and gives him the life of a boy.
I mean, if there was one person who wouldn't run out of air in a whale, it wouldn't be Geppetto, it would be Pinocchio.
It would be Pinocchio.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then he has to start eating Geppetto to... No, then if he doesn't need to breathe, he doesn't need to eat either, so that's a moot point. He just watches Geppetto's body dissolve. Decompose in whale bile. There you go. There's a dark reimagining there of Pinocchio. But meanwhile, that's at the end of the movie. Earlier on in the movie, St Johnstone's youth players get turned into donkeys at the station park. And finally, Shaughan, we are going to finish by going to Stair Park. Stranraer are up and running. They defeated East Fife 2-1 courtesy of Mark Russell's brace. And they've got the interim management team of Scott Robertson and Paul Woods, who are going to continue for the next couple of games. They're off the foot of the table. Now, I don't know about you, Shaughan. When I go onto YouTube and type Stran, I don't want autocomplete to suggest Stranger Things. Start recommending Stranraer FC.
See, when you, I must admit, I was killing myself laughing when you tweeted that clip.
Unbelievable.
Because I was thinking, like, obviously we already, I didn't think it was possible for either of us to like or enjoy the commentary of Stranraer FC anymore. But the fact that they seem to be into wrestling, I was thinking, my goodness, I cannot imagine how much Craig Telfer is popping off here.
It's like unbelievable. Now, like, see Stranraer's highlights. Every time we talk about a Stranraer game, we always say the same thing. They are the best highlights in the SPFL. Everything about them. The production values are phenomenal. And given that I'm going to assume it's volunteers are doing that, they deserve huge credit for that. But then you chuck in Lawrence Nelson and Brian Martin, and that just escalates it to a completely different stratosphere from any other team in this country. And this was the first time I'd actually watched the Stranraer highlights this season, so shame on me for not doing it. And there's something very comforting about them. If I was to compare them to a TV show, it would be like Call the Midwife or Heartbeat, where you can just put your feet up and you just be entertained for 17 minutes and everything's fine in the world, But the moment, I think it's Elliot Dunlop has a shot in the bar and Lawrence Nelson goes, "Oh, I think there's some wrestling going on behind an embankment," and then the camera just cuts to these wee boys toy fighting each other. And then Brian Martin, was it Mick McManus and Jackie Powell?
I must admit, I only knew one of those wrestlers. I was not familiar with the second one.
I had to Google Jackie Powell myself, but what an illustrious career that he had in the 70s in wrestling. But these are the highlights are great. Delighted to see Stranraer get the win. Main takeaway from this, though, not so much highlights. Dean Hawkshaw, I think, is going for a hair transplant.
I think so.
Did you know? I think he is.
I would have to go back and have a look.
I think it's right. When they film the teams warming up and they bring down the graphics and Lawrence and Brian go front through. Mm-hmm. That's where I think he's away for a hair transplant. If you're not, Dean, do get in touch, because when Sean and I next get together, we'll read out. Yeah, we have a message in from Dean Hawkshaw. He is not getting a hair transplant. I think Tom
I must admit that neither of those things were the highlight of the game for me.
What was the highlight of the game for you?
I think the highlight was Liam McFarlane's red card and Andy Munro having to go in goals for East Fife.
There's something, you don't see it often enough, an outfield player going in goals. And the only annoying thing was this happened right at the very end of the game, so we didn't really get a chance to see Andy Munro take a goal kick. But the red card, for those who haven't seen it, Liam McFarlane tries to roll the ball out. I'm not sure who he tries to roll it to. Completely makes a hash of it. Comes to edge of it. I think it's Max Guthrie is coming in to challenge it, and then he punches it away. Now, a lot of confusion as to what actually happened here.
So it looked like he kind of... So it was weird because he didn't have to throw it that far, but his technique was kind of underarm, but it almost went high. Well, it did. It went higher than it went long. So he then had to... He didn't have to. Like, he could have chased it and then just kicked it. But he chased it, caught it temporarily, and just as he got to the edge of the box, took a step forward and then chucked it. And I thought what was quite interesting for the next, maybe it was 24 hours or whatever, is it was another demonstration that, other than Craig Anderson, nobody in Britain knows any rules about football. So I think most people thought, well, it's because he's caught it outside the area. It was only Craig Anderson had a wee look. He goes, no, I think he's caught it inside the area, but then denied a goal scoring opportunity, which would be a red card. And I think since then there's been 2 or 3 other people that said, yeah, actually you're right, it probably is the case.
However, I spoke to an associate of mine this morning. We were talking about this. He said, did you see the Stranraer highlights of the weekend? I thought he was going to talk about Mick McManus and Jackie Pallow. No, he was actually talking about the incident. Now, quite interesting his take on it, because he said, like, if I got to remember what he said here, so I don't misquote him, I think that it's not the denial of a goal scoring opportunity, because basically if you handle a back pass, for instance, where the striker's bearing down on you, that's effectively denying a goal scoring opportunity, but you don't get red carded for it. Effectively just an indirect free kick. But
it's because Liam McFarlane is essentially catching his own throw out. So that's the first issue.
He said the only time you'd see a red card is if the ball isn't in play. Like I say, for instance, there's a goal kick, he fluffs the goal kick, the striker comes in it, and the goalkeeper takes the second kick. That's a red card. So it is quite confusing. I might be wrong. Craig Anderson might be listening to this, and I might get admonished, roasted in the group chat. So if there's one thing I know from looking at Craig Anderson online, I would not want to disagree with him on a topic. So I am going to presume that Craig Anderson was correct. There was one time I think I was right and he was wrong, but it turned out it was a technicality and it fell down the middle. I was really annoyed about that, because I really wanted something that I could be like, ha, you're incorrect. But I'm just pleased to see Stranraer get up and running. I was really sorry to see Scott Agnew lose his job over this, but it's good to see that Scott Robertson, who is very well regarded at Stair Park, that he's able to kick on, and at least the performance seasons, I know they didn't do very well against Annan in the Challenge Cup. They took a bit of a pasting there. But coming up against a very good East Fife team who have made a really positive start to the season, make them look second best. Mark Russell scored 2 really good goals against them. That's a positive, and hopefully they can kick on for the rest of the season.
That was a good result. It was a good performance. I did think their statement was slightly weird. Maybe it was just oddly put together. Like it almost suggested that, like, they talked about the fact that they'd interviewed candidates and they were still being considered. However, Robertson was going to get the next few games. It was just a weirdly put together statement, almost as if it was like, right, well, essentially it felt like saying, as long as Robertson does well in the next few games, the job's his. But if he doesn't, there are other people who might get it. It was just an unusually worded statement, I thought.
And then he gets the job and the results absolutely flatline again. Kind of similar to what's happening at Arbroath at the moment. See what's happening at Arbroath, 1 game, a 2-1 defeat against one of their title favourites. Oh, that's season's over. I think it was quite funny as well. Dick Campbell getting sent off for this, because Dick Campbell went onto the pitch to remonstrate with the referee. And Stuart Malcolm, the East Fife coach,
ushering them off.
Ushering off like somebody like looking after their carer, you know, and like give that right. Come on, Dick, sit down. We'll get a John Wayne movie on. Get a tartan blanket.
If you hadn't done that, I feel that remonstration would have went on much, much longer.
Yeah, well, at least. Listen, so thank you, Stuart Malcolm. Thank you for looking after your dad like that. Well, I think that's just we've filled our guts. That's actually turned into a decent podcast. Managed to cover quite a lot there.
I think so.
So yeah, I mean, I had a great time. Shaughan had a great time, and frankly, that's I've got frankly in my notes here. I said frankly instead of Right, anyway, Shaughan and we're off to answer questions from our Patreon subscribers in a special bonus podcast. And if you want to listen to it, you're going to have to subscribe to our Patreon. It's for as little as £2 a month. You can have access to some outstanding content almost every day. I listen to it myself, and it's usually very, very good. So please do consider it, because it is very much worth your time. Now, if you are going to a game this weekend, please enjoy your football, but unlike Cilla Black, who 10 years ago sat at a reserve table and refused to move, please do so respectfully. That's all we can possibly ask from you. It's great seeing that being shared, isn't it? That's one of the all-time great tweets.
Tremendous, one of the best. You've went through a real phase in the last kind of week and a half or so of this. Are you just putting on Instagram some of your favourite tweets?
Yeah, it's good. It's good engagement. You just get folks sending cry laughing emojis.
I've enjoyed that. I like that one of the that former Tory MP saying, please ignore my moobs, or whatever they said.
Just what a vibe. Michael Fabricant.
As if his moobs were the most ridiculous thing in that picture.
Anyway, we will see you soon. Take care. God bless, and enjoy your football. But do so respectfully. Thank you.